Good afternoon, everybody. We're just admitting a few more people in from the waiting room. We'll get started in about 30 seconds here. All right, I think we've got everybody in here, so we'll get started. First off, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our TR Month virtual panel discussion. My name is Jordan Wall, and I'm the Executive Director for the Saskatchewan Association of Recreation Professionals, sometimes referred to as SARP, sometimes referred to as SARP. We may say both throughout the session. Thrilled that you've taken the time to join us today as we celebrate National TR Month and look to engage in some meaningful discussions about TR within our province and across the country. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that SARP engages its work in the lands within Treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, the traditional territories of the Cree, Dakota, Dene, Lakota, Nakota, and Saulteaux peoples, and the homeland of the Métis. We recognize and respect these lands and are committed to reconciliation and ongoing learning and work. So as we begin, I'd like to extend a big thank you to our panelists. We have four great panelists with us today. Thanking them for sharing their time and their expertise with us. They're an excellent lineup of professionals who bring diverse perspectives and experiences to this conversation. So our first person joining us today is Dr. Rebecca Janot from the University of Regina. Rebecca is a professor in the TR program and has been doing so since 2009. She specializes in leisure and aging with a focus on TR and long-term care and later life transitions. Lynn Skalicki joins us from the City of Regina. She's a CTRS and inclusive recreation advisor. Lynn has over 10 years of experience creating inclusive community programs. She developed the Inclusion Support Service, which helps individuals overcome barriers to recreation. We also have Jordan Hilbig with us with the Salvation Army William Booth Special Care Home. A CTRS, Jordan has been working in dementia care since graduating in 2021. She focuses on personalized programs that support physical, emotional, and social well-being. And last but not least, McKaylee Dreger with Brightwater Senior Living. A CTRS and engagement manager, Mick has experience working with diverse populations and is a strong advocate for dementia care and quality of life enhancement throughout recreation. So again, very, very excited to have our group with us today. I suppose I should have flipped over to the next screen here if it will allow me, which it didn't. So there we go. You can see everyone's great faces there. So just a few housekeeping notes before we jump into things. This session is being recorded. It will be available on our website at sarponline.ca afterwards. So please check it out there or share as needed. All attendees. Are you guys getting the echo that I was getting? Chantal, I'm looking at you. Are you getting the echo? Okay, just give me one second here.
Francis said to mute everybody. Oh, someone has a Bluetooth speaker. That's why it's causing the echo.
Is that any better? Are you guys hearing me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. All right. So session is being recorded. Attendees will be on mute and now are on mute. So it's an important housekeeping note right there. And we definitely want everybody to engage in the conversation. So please drop your questions in the chat function. If we can get to those at the end, we will. And our moderator will also have an opportunity to ask questions at the end if we have some time, and you'll be able to use the raise function. And we can bring you off mute at that point. So as you can see on the screen, our moderator is Chantal Erdman, who's a valued member of our SARP board of directors. also a recreation therapist at the Wascana Rehabilitation Center, if I can get that right for you, Chantel.
That's all
So
good.
I'll turn it over to Chantel. She will lead us through this session and stick handle all these great conversations with these great panelists. So with no further ado, Chantel, take it away.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks so much for everybody for coming in on this fantastic opportunity to have some great people aboard here, sharing all their wealth and wisdom in the sector. Also, a little bit about myself. I've been around in the recreation field, not just recreation therapist, for 40 plus years, in every aspect you can imagine. So yeah, I'm a lifer. I could retire, but I haven't yet. So with further ado, we'll get right on with the panel discussion. So I'm not sure, Jordan, if you're gonna one in the rain, you'll want to. All right. So we'll start off. Let's see, who do we want to? So inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. So IDEA. So we'll start off with the first question. How are programs being adapted? And the panelists, you guys can start with whoever, and then the next can go. Or I will say.
I can speak to that. So I have that this is tough, and as we know, it is never ending. So every individual we cross paths with may need something different from us, and that's what makes TR so amazing. So some adaptations and inclusion. I looked at inclusion. I started with equipment, so like Braille, high visibility cards, things like that, large paintbrushes, seated options in fitness, different ways to make sure that everybody can be included in their own way. This can also be looked at as far as changing the levels of difficulty of our programs and the introduction of teamwork. So I found something that's been really helpful in inclusion and adapting programs to make them inclusive is potentially having somebody really independent that's looking for a little bit of fulfillment in their day to maybe team up or pair with somebody that is more dependent, needing more support in the program. So both individuals end up feeling included and successful.
Thank you. All right. Alin?
Hi, yes, I can go next. Okay, so my answer is a little bit longer here, but I can try to summarize. So I think a lot of, because I'm in community, it looks a little bit different. And a lot of it, I think from our end is just really meeting people where we're at. Where I'm working, I'm not directly involved with a lot of the programs. I'm more from the service side, helping people access programs. So we're really trying to focus more on like leisure awareness, finding, suitable program referrals, finding the support that people need in order to get there and actually participate. So that when I say meeting people where they're at, that process is going to look really, really different for everybody. From where, we have intake and people actually filling out the application, that's going to even look really different for everybody, whether it's in person, they're sending it over email, we're having a phone call, we're meeting at a city facility and giving a tour. Even that process will look really different. And then the same would apply really for like the program implementation and participation. All our programs at the city are open for anybody to participate in, but we do offer specific adapted programming. Oftentimes that'll mean smaller group sizes. Instructors maybe have more training to be able to assist and adapt accordingly. We have a variety of adapted equipment that we'll use depending on the activity. And then we'll also have potentially some additional people on site to support. So for example, one of the things that we offer through the inclusion support service that I operate at the city, it's a one-on-one leisure companion. So even just being able to provide that support is a really good adaptation that will just help people access more programming.
Fantastic. Thank you. Rebecca?
Thanks, Chantel. Is it okay if I kind of move to the second question there? Nodding. Okay, thank you. So it's kind of good timing because we were just talking about cultural safety in my TR fourth year seminar in the past few weeks. So I'm kind of prepared for this one. So I think what's really important is how we can ensure we're being inclusive to diverse populations is first by engaging in our self-reflexive practice and constantly seeking out opportunities for education. So I'm just going to drop a link in the chat if that's okay. This is a checklist that I shared with my students. Give me a second here. Unfortunately, it's an American checklist, and there are all kinds of checklists like this online that basically prompts healthcare workers to reflect on their practice and consider what they're including and what they're maybe unintentionally not including. So items include things like, do the images and pictures that I'm using represent the diversity that's happening in your practice? Even things like, are translation services available? To more personal things like, am I avoiding imposing values that may conflict with those of other cultural groups? So I find that was a really useful students for both myself and my students, useful checklist, sorry, to go through and really think about how to adapt our services to make sure that we're being really inclusive. And I think it's important to remember that leisure has different meanings for different people, and we need to avoid making assumptions about what it means. And finally, I'm going to share one more resource that is a journal article that was recently published by Britta Peterson regarding her work on TR practice in Indigenous communities. And in this article, Peterson reminds us of the importance of cultural safety and cultural humility. And this is a really excellent read for those of you who have access. I know I'm the professor giving you guys readings. Some things never change.
Thanks, Rebecca. All right, and Jordan.
Hi, yeah, so I think, I mean, everyone has kind of already summed up what I was going to say, but I think it's interesting. As a TR, we kind of are already in the mindset of adapting programs. Like when I had to really think about this question for some reason, going back to the first bullet point of like, I don't know, I just kind of adapt every day. Like everything is already kind of just adapted in our brain. So I had to really think, I'm like, what are we doing? And of course, there's the obvious, like kind of what Mick said of like, yeah, we're using really large handled paintbrushes. Or when we're playing baseball, we're using like a large, extra huge, like actual baseball rather than a little baseball. Like, so every day we're kind of adapting things, equipment, and, you know, intellectually we're adapting things to meet the needs of our people. And then so it kind of, yeah, it was interesting for me to think about that. And then with what Rebecca was saying of how can we ensure that we're being inclusive, I think every day is a learning curve. And I love that you shared that, Rebecca, because every day I learn something and I think to myself, oh, okay, well, we could do this a little bit differently to make sure that we're, you know, helping this individual the way he needs. Like, for example, we had nothing set in stone for someone who uses ASL, so sign language. We just had never had a resident who used that. And then we had a resident come and we're like, oh, well, now we need to shift our focus. And now we need to do some learning and some education for the whole staff of how we can adapt that. So I think it's like it's a very, very fluid process. It's not linear of how we are inclusive, but it's always learning and learning from you guys as well. So.
Yeah, and I find it interesting too, just with people with English as a second language too. There's so many different tools that we can use as well as like to adapt that too for them. So yeah, I find that we do have to be quite more adaptable considering what our populations are all coming in as now too. So, all right. And then the third question. So what challenges have you encountered in integrating IDEA into recreation program, and how have you overcome them? And we'll just go in the same order if that's okay. Mick?
So I have that my main challenge is diversity. So as a lot of people in long-term care likely do, I work for Brightwater. And so originally we were just private. Now we host long-term care beds for SHA. with a locked unit for individuals that need it. So we're working with people that are, 29 to 101, who are completely independent and private and get their own mail, their own prescriptions to essentially SHA palliative care, right? So I think the hardest thing is just trying to find a way to work with all of those individuals and to all keep them included, and having them have successful moments together. We have some people that have mental health challenges. We have some people with chronic illnesses, comorbidities, all coming from different walks of life. And then you throw in the cultural aspect, like we talked about. I think that the biggest way that I've found to not overcome, because it's obviously a very much an ongoing thing, is to just have different types of programs and have that why not mindset. Why not try this? Why not try this? And having something different that tries to appeal to each person, maybe not all at the same time, if possible, yes. And then I also had a note for myself, going back a little bit to what Jordan and Rebecca had said about going to the experts when we're talking about diversity. Never assume that you know the most about something. And I've told myself that, and I've learned so much by just assuming sometimes that I know the least about something. Reaching out to elders. There's lots of great resources at libraries, a lot of guest speakers that go in. I know Sunrise Library I connected with when I was with Sassy's, reaching out to different churches and cultural associations to try and get information that's firsthand so that we can appeal to the massive population that we work with. And I know that I'm probably not the only one in this room that works with someone who's 30 and also 101, right? So it's something that's very unique about our profession. And I think, yeah, just taking the time to know that you're not necessarily the expert in a lot of things.
Fantastic. All right. And then we had Lynn next.
Perfect. Hi. I will say my internet is all of a sudden picks the worst times to just be really shoddy. So if I do freeze or sign out, I will hop back on and just use a hotspot. But to kind of build off what was said already, I think that we at the city, we're pretty fortunate that we have a disability reference group in our recreation area. And it's basically made up of community members who have lived experience of disability, who we meet every other month. And we discuss a variety of recreation topics that the city is working on. And it's more of a grassroots, like, conversational group. Sorry, I'm looking at one screen, but I forgot my webcam's over here. I'll look over here. We get just feedback on anything that we're working on in terms of recreation and parks and cultural services. So I find that to be really, really helpful in terms of getting kind of a wide perspective on the variety of things that we're working on at the city. One of the biggest challenges I think that we've heard from that group as well is that, it's one thing to say that you're being inclusive, and it's a totally different thing to actually be truly inclusive in the environment that you're providing for leisure. So I think a big thing about that, like, some people will often just tag, inclusive programs, or, this is an inclusive environment, but really knowing, like, what, if somebody were to ask, like, what are you doing to make this program inclusive? I think a big piece of that that we've learned on our end is that the staff and volunteers who are working the program, having them being properly trained on all of the inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility areas is really important. And I think they're the first people often that those participants are going to be seeing when they come into a program. So if those first interactions are not welcoming or making them feel safe and included, then, it's not going to be really successful, especially in terms of inclusion. So that's definitely a challenge we have here at the city. We have probably 500 or so casual staff in our pool, between lifeguards, people who are running recreation programs, those first people that you'll see at the cashier desk, all of those. And so training has been a big challenge, trying to find something that works for each different group, but making sure that it's also meaningful, for sure. I would say that's probably what our biggest challenge is here.
That's very cool, though, that you're thinking of everybody on the team, right? So that they all know what to expect or how to, help the people that want to use your services. So
For sure. Yeah. And we've gotten quite a lot of feedback in terms of aquatics. So making sure that, that we're focusing on more lifeguard and aquatic training, as opposed, that might not be the same type of training that a cashier would maybe find to be meaningful as well.
sure. Awesome. Rebecca?
I think from my perspective, one of the challenges is the lack of current research on idea in therapeutic recreation specifically. And so if we can find a way to increase the research out there, that would give recreation therapists kind of more background and more evidence really to support the programs that they're doing that are inclusive in these ways. And so a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, a social worker emailed me to ask for information on culturally safe programs for people with dementia. So I did a search and I had a really hard time finding relevant information. So I think that's a big challenge for us.
All the researchers. All right. And Jordan.
Okay, first of all, same with Alin. My Wi-Fi is really bad right now, so I'm sorry if I'm not hearing you. But I think again, everybody's kind of already said a challenge, and I was gonna say all of what you've already said, but definitely the training side of things. To hop on the train with Alin there of I actually just had this conversation with my student right now she's working on creating an exercise, like a chair exercise program. And I had to kind of get her into the mindset of, whoa. Remember, we have people that are CCAs who are running programs like this. They've never had anything like this type of training before. So what is really easy on paper to us, and I can probably, if you gave me some music, I could probably just whip it out. Same with anybody in rec, we can usually just like figure something out. But if you're a CCA and you've never done anything like this before, well, we have to make sure that you're trained to run these programs. And I'm speaking from a day program perspective where I have CCAs who do both recreation and care. So yeah, that was kind of an interesting conversation today, and it really relates to this. And then another big challenge I've had, probably within the past like year or two, is I've had a lot of, we're talking about, oh, we should reach out to these community resources. We should reach out to this person. And yes, that's absolutely true. But I've encountered a lot of doors just slammed in my face, or a lot of false promises from companies or organizations where I'll reach out and we'll have a good discussion and then there's never any follow-up. Or, I've been trying to get certain people to come in and do programs or, special guest things for the residents. And sometimes it just doesn't follow through. And so that's a big challenge. But I think the way I overcome them is I just keep on trying. And I'm kind of that annoying person who's like, hey, I'm still here and I'm still gonna ask you about this. So yeah, and that goes with advocating for TR too, right? So
yeah, it seems to be a trend on a lot of things in life in general, right? That you have to be your own advocate for everything. So
exactly.
For sure. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Or is there anything else that anybody wants to mention about any of the three questions here? I think we covered them pretty good. We still have three more. All right. So then Jordan, since you have been going last, we'll switch it up this time and we'll have you go first. So technology integration. So how is technology transforming rec therapy?
So this was an interesting question because I'm very I'm kind of impartial with technology. I see the benefit, and it really has benefited in certain ways. And then in certain ways, I find it really difficult to use in long-term care, specifically with dementia. But I think for us, it's really, really helped with like creating programs and like the preparation of activities and programs. That's where I've found it the most helpful. Like there's so many websites that you can utilize that have cool ideas and cool resources and things like that. And then it's also helped with, like preparing, instead of using, for example, bingo balls with like the old school, like little plastic balls, you can actually find it online, and it actually makes the process a lot quicker. And I'm not running all over the place trying to pick up the bingo balls and things like that. So in that way, technology has been really, really helpful. And it's made programming a lot more portable. So for example, if I'm working like one-to-one with somebody, I can take an iPad to their room and listen to music, or put on spa music in the background, or like I can do that sort of a thing, rather than when I first came, they were still using like old school projectors with like the clear pages that you put on the projector, and one page at a time. So we had binders full of these clear plastic sheets, and that's not super accessible. Like you can't take that to somebody's room, right? So I find that's been really helpful. And a big one actually has been like those robotic animals, like the little cats. Those are really awesome. And yeah, it's just technology it's changed things. I have challenges with them, but for the most part, it's been good. It's made our lives a lot easier, that's for sure too.
Yeah, and then it's just taking that time to learn it all too, right? That's what sometimes is difficult with that too. So, all right, and then we'll go with Rebecca.
Thanks. It's really interesting to hear how you've been using technology, Jordan, and I look forward to hearing what McKaylee and Alin have to add to that. I think technology is like obviously becoming an important part of our leisure, and so we need to think about how that is going to impact how we run our programs. And there has been some research published around like telehealth and having like virtual TR, which I think could be really beneficial for people who are maybe socially isolated or like can't travel to a TR program. I think there's a possibility to kind of reach audiences or clients that we're currently missing through things like telehealth and that sort of thing. I think virtual reality does have a lot of potential to meet a variety of leisure interests and strengths, like relaxation, skill development, and just experiencing different things. And yesterday in class, we had a seminar about therapeutic recreation and climate change. And it was interesting to see how the students thought about how we need to do things indoors because of things like wildfire smoke. And we know the benefits of being outdoors, and how their solution was to use virtual reality to kind of bring the outdoors indoors when we can't go outside because it's dangerous to be out there. So I thought that was a really interesting discussion that we had yesterday. I'll pass it on to the next person.
Or the freezing cold temperatures we had last week.
Yeah, exactly. Or the freezing cold. So I think people are using it for like birding programs and things like that. So it was really great discussion.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Alin.
So yeah, I think with virtual options, obviously in COVID, that was what we pretty much relied on, right? But now, I think a lot of that has really stuck around, at least in a general sense. People are just doing things more virtually, but as Rebecca said, there's definitely more interest in people having virtual programming options. We've also heard that through community consultation, especially those who are immunocompromised or aren't able to get out to programs, that we offer some type of virtual option. So we've been kind of playing with different ways to do that. I know that there are some, programs where, they'll drop off the art supplies at the person's house, and then they'll do like an art program together. I don't know if it's CNIB that does that, but I know there's one that exists, and it sounds like really cool. And I think there should be certainly more of those. And it's important that we haven't lost some of that virtual stuff after COVID for sure. But in terms of other technology, I know, like prior to my working at the city, I worked in retirement home, and some of the technology that we used there was really cool. Like during COVID, we were able to, have a virtual meeting with somebody in Churchill, Manitoba, and do like a virtual snow sledding, dog sledding tour, which was really cool. And then, they installed like a virtual bike tour program where you'd have kind of like a GoPro of people touring different parts of the world that you would bike along to. So I think there's lots of really cool alternatives now. What I'm more so working with kind of at the city now is looking at different technology in terms of accessible equipment. So as we're upgrading recreation facilities, you know, things like hearing loops that can be installed. There's lots of different ways to do it. But for example, and I'm not an expert by any means, but some need to be actually like installed in like floorboards or things like that to be able to enhance hearing in one room. There's other smaller little things that you can bring or have, you know, be carried around so that the presenter of a presentation or somebody's instructing a class, that it'll connect to somebody's hearing aid. So we're always looking at different types of technology we can use in our facilities as well. And that's one example. I think a big challenge, of course, is cost. These are some of the most costly resources and program equipment that will probably be coming across. So trying to find grants and things like that. And then, for example, you know, hearing loops, those require sometimes some pretty intense renovations that may not be easy to do if you're having to install things like within the existing infrastructure. But it's super beneficial because it allows people to participate, you know, in programs and things that they weren't able to before, or if they were able to before, it maybe just enhances it so that they can be more active and participate in a more meaningful way. So I'm a big advocate for the technology.
Yeah, and you don't ever think of all of those other little things, and then of course where you have to have it adapted within the building too, right? So yeah, for sure. All right, Mick.
Okay, so I'm a kind of a mix of everybody. I see where Jordan comes from with some of the challenges. You know, we definitely don't want to get to a place where that need for human to human programming is feeling a little bit less important to people. We already have a hard time in long-term care pulling people out of their rooms right now. I don't know if anybody's struggling to get people away from curling to come to a program and see other people. And so we don't want to get stuck on that. But with that being said, I think it's an awesome way for us to facilitate some like independent leisure. You know, I know a stressor that a lot of us have working in long-term care, especially, is I feel like I have 150 people's quality of life that I'm responsible for right now, right? And so knowing that, you know, more than half of them are sitting in a quiet room by themselves, the thought of at least being able to have, you know, an Alexa to play an audio book or for them to put music on with to help with activities of daily living that they couldn't do before. You know, our memory unit here has, or our Arbor locked unit has an infinity table. I don't know if you guys have seen those. It's like a giant iPad with a bunch of touchscreen games. And that kind of connects to what you had said, Jordan, about the training. You know, when you have a piece of technology that's there and ready to use, there's less need for facilitation training, right? You sit down and you could be a CCA or a resident assistant that just does that with the resident. You maybe don't need to have all of the skills that go with running a game on kind of on the fly like we do in rec therapy, right? So that was kind of my main thing that I was excited about. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Obi. It's probably everybody's wish list right now. It's the coolest. It's an interactive projector. Again, the challenge is being cost, like Lynn had said, but I think the main really exciting part is just stretching our abilities to be with our residents without physically being with our residents, because I'm sure all of us agree that we could be a 1-to-1 ratio for residents and we'd be happy, right? I wish there was about 150 of me, but there's about 3 on our department for the most part, right? So I think that that's the biggest benefit of technology.
Yeah, just being able to reach a lot of different people with all the different things too, right? Like I even like that we have a VR system here too. And it was really interesting just to see all the things that you can do with that too, you know, and you just taking people back to where they grew up, you know, and showing them that kind of stuff. So yeah, there are so many benefits of that. All right, we'll go on to the next slide just in times here. So Jordan, we'll have you start again too.
So with our dementia, people with dementia, there's a lot of different interventions that you can do. And I think it's just fascinating because I find you can learn about it all you want, but then as soon as you get in person, you're like, whoa, okay, this person needs something totally different than this person, and this person's dementia is very, very different than this person's dementia. And so I find it's so interesting to what Mick said too. I wish there was like 50 of me to be one-on-one with these people, because yeah, like what would work for somebody of, you know, providing like one-on-one dementia care. So maybe we're taking them back to the time on the farm when they were folding towels and washing clothes in the wash basin. Maybe we're doing that with somebody who's having a challenging behavior. So maybe we're doing that with somebody. And I think those types of interventions are really important to do. Kind of those one-on-one specifically related to dementia programs. But then I also think some really innovative interventions that we do are kind of in general adapting those larger groups, where we're doing, baseball with a giant 2-foot wide foam baseball, or we're doing the floor curling. I'm sure all of you have heard of the floor curling because it's a favorite. So I think it's a fun balance between, those one-on-one programs, but then also in a large group setting, sometimes we're doing like what's in the box, we call it. And it's like, okay, reach your hand in and grab something in the box. And what do you feel? Tell me about it. What does it remind you of? And then let's talk about it when you have the answer. Or guess the scent is a really fun one where, okay, we're going to blindfold you and you have to smell this thing. What does it remind you of? Oh, it's cinnamon. What does cinnamon remind you of? Have you ever worked with cinnamon? And so it's interesting, like, you know, when you say innovative recreation, it can go in both ways of the one-on-one support and then in the large group setting. And then I also think innovative recreation is, I mean, a lot of us have a lot of hats when we're in recreation therapy. Like sometimes I put on my volunteer coordinator hat, and then sometimes I put on my like OH&S hat, and we're kind of all over the place. But I think what's really important too, and I think we have a lot of knowledge of this, is like we just started painting the whole building, is getting a new paint job, because we kind of decided as a management team, well, it's actually like a really horrible color, and people with dementia are seeing this as like there's a big black picture on the wall and it kind of looks like a hole in the wall if you had dementia. So I think that sort of innovation is really important too, of like, how can we transform the space and how can we make the space more accessible? And I don't know, that's kind of a lengthy answer, but all of these things, it's hard to name just one or two. There's so many things that you do on a day-to-day basis. So
That's exactly it. Alin.
Thanks. Did we skip Rebecca or no? I didn't know if I
I'm
thought it was
just
after
switching it
Rebecca,
up
but
a
I'm good.
No, I'm just switching it up a bit.
Oh, okay. So because I'm not really in this realm of things too much, I don't have as much of a awareness of what's innovative, I guess, in terms of seniors and dementia care right now. In a community, we definitely are more focusing on where are the gaps in the community for those people who maybe are transitioning out of supports, for those maybe more with the chronic illness side of things. You know, for example, if there's individuals who maybe are transitioning out of, you know, the acquired brain injury unit with the Saskatchewan Health Authority, or anything like that, and they're maybe out in community, they finished kind of their rehab, and so they're out in community, and what are the options that are available to them in terms of leisure? So that's kind of where we're supporting people, and it's kind of picking up from that end and trying to find, you know, good routines, good opportunities for them that they can, you know, kind of continue on with that support that they've been receiving. In terms of dementia, we don't work a whole lot in community with individuals with dementia specifically. I know that we had previously done like a respite day respite program in the afternoon, and it didn't really have a whole lot of uptake on it, so that pilot didn't really continue on forward. But I think that there's certainly a need for, more respite care for those who are living out in community that maybe aren't in, long-term care facilities yet. I think that's, super important. There is the piece that I did think about from what Jordan had said about sensory rooms. This is totally jumping back to my previous role, but I know that's maybe more of an innovation now as of late, having more sensory rooms or sensory spaces for those with dementia. I think, again, those things are costly and have high budgets and things like that. But I think that's really all I can say about those.
Yep, no, that's good. Rebecca.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I'm kind of struggling with the word innovative as well. And I think like going back to some of those tried and true programs that we might not consider innovative, but are still important, like our intergenerational programs, things like that, like pets, bringing pets in. Everyone loves to visit with a dog, right? So some of those activities I think continue to be really important for meeting the needs of people who are living with dementia, getting outside, getting your fingers dirty in the garden, and kind of that sensory experience of the soil and flowers. So like not necessarily innovative, but still important to tap into people's interests. And like Jordan mentioned, the towel folding, which was one of my favorite activities when I worked in long-term care because it was so effective. So again, not really innovative, but super important.
Yep, for sure. We always forget about all those things that have always been effective, right? And we might not need always the innovative part of that too. Yeah.
I don't want to say that innovation isn't important, but
yeah, no, for sure. There's always different things that come up. So for sure. All right. And then Mick.
Yeah, so when I think of innovative and dementia care, my mind automatically goes to some of those really amazing communities in BC where you're in little dementia towns, and how we can use that to kind of do what Jordan had said and make our environments successful. So rather than having, a unit that's just a big loop of all the same color walls, maybe have the door that locks look like a bookshelf. Have you walk a few feet up to maybe a fake window that has some flowers you can rearrange. Once you keep walking, maybe you'll pass a chalkboard wall. Maybe around the next hallway, there's a puzzle table. Maybe the next hallway has some coloring stations set up. So again, not to take us out of the equation, but to add us in a way that we can be facilitators of really, really great passive programming in just simply making our environment successful for the residents with dementia. And so without going into all of those ideas, there's so many fun things you can research. If you look online, there's so many cool ways you can cover doors and make all sorts of things, sensory-based programs. You can get fish tanks that aren't real fish that look real, like it's amazing. And then I just also have here, maybe not so much innovative to us, but innovative to other care teams, is just inserting us into that circle of care, being involved in care conferences, making sure that we're going to find out some social history on our residents that we're working with. What makes them tick? Who were they before they're the person that they are right now? What parts of them do we need to really focus on? And so that's talking to families, friends, communities, all of that. And so again, doesn't necessarily seem innovative to us, but it may be to the rest of the care team, and just to really get ourselves in there and be involved.
For sure. So then the next question, how can we measure the success of rec therapy interventions for older adults? We'll start with Jordan again.
So this is an interesting question. There's a lot of ways, informally and formally, we can measure these successes. And it's taken me a while to kind of figure that out. I'm not going to lie. So we have charting systems that we use that measure attendance of who comes to which programs. So of course I can see from that perspective, oh, perfect. This person came this many times and is in a great mood. So things like documentation is very, very important for measuring those successes. But what I've found to be the most important is those charted notes and decreasing in like challenging behaviors. So maybe, you know, nurses are doing assessments on residents if they're having challenging behaviors, and where kind of what Mick said, if we can insert ourselves and look at what we can do to decrease those challenging behaviors and increase that person's quality of life, and inserting ourselves into the care team to be an advocate for residents, and to really kind of validify, if that's a word. I don't even know if that's a word, but to really make our profession more important and seem more important, is those are the things that are very interesting. And I just had an aha moment like last week. The care staff was having challenges with a resident, and for a long time. And I've been working with this resident one-on-one, talking about, you know, autonomy and kind of trying to build up that autonomy in this one resident. And lo and behold, her really challenging behaviors have decreased a lot. And the care staff has said that, oh, I don't know what happened to this person, she's seeming a lot better. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, because that's what rec therapy does, is we can help with those behaviors. And yeah, so I think that's a really important way to measure success, is inserting yourself in the care team. And
Yeah. And like, honestly, we're with them a lot during the day too, you know, and we're not on the medical model so much, you know, like we're not worried about doing all their personal care and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we get to know our residents a lot more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, and being able to advocate to the other team members is definitely a benefit to our residents themselves too. So yeah. Mick.
So I have, Rebecca, you'll be really proud of me. I have observing, interviewing, and documenting. So I want to know our behaviors changing. I want to know what staff and family have to say about the resident. I want to check my documentation to see when are they coming, why are they coming, are they always sleeping at bingo but they're wide awake at music. And I think it's really important to, you know, our profession can get really subjective because we spend so much quality time with people. It's really important to take ourselves out of it and to try and be as unbiased and objective as we can be. What am I literally seeing? What differences am I actually seeing in real time between the residents, between point A and point B, and taking that kind of scientific approach at things? I would say, and also pay attention to what effect you're making in the community that you're working in. What do the family members have to say about your team? Do they say, you know, oh, the rec team's amazing here? Do they say, I wish there was more things to do? And taking that criticism or those positives constructively and actually using them to measure the job that you're doing as well.
Very valid points. Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, I don't have too much else to add. I think Jordan and Mick really did a great job answering this question. I guess the one thing that I thought of was what do you mean by success? And so like really thinking about what it is that you want to measure. So Jordan mentioned, they both mentioned a whole bunch of different things that you can measure to identify as success. And whether it's like the number of people that show up, the number of times to a program could be success, or how much of a reduction in responsive behaviors there is. So I think the thing that you need to do first is figure out what exactly it is you're measuring, like what is your definition of success and why, and then kind of going from there to figure out how to actually measure that. And I think Jordan and McKaylee really spoke already to how to go about doing that. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lynn to see if she has anything to add.
Yeah, and I was just going to interject there too. So, I mean, yes, we always look at the numbers and everything else too, but we always have to remember too about the meaningful moments that each of the residents are having, because sometimes we can have those larger programs and people are just there, but are they really getting the meaningful intervention of what we really want them to have too, right? So charting is huge. So I totally believe in that, and keeping track of everybody and seeing how they're doing and all that kind of stuff, not just the numbers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like measuring joy is really difficult to do, right? Measuring meaning is super difficult. So trying to think of some creative ways. And I think McKaylee's interviews and observations are going to really speak to capturing those important outcomes of TR.
All right, Lynn.
Everything, yeah, I think everything was really already said. I don't know if I have much to add. Yeah, I think that qualitative feedback that we can get from the participants and the support networks is really great. And of course, yeah, we can measure and have those attendance and all of that quantitative feedback that will really help. But I think that qualitative piece, especially for us in community, we're, trying to get those testimonials, I guess, so to speak, from the participants, and if it's even not the participants, but their family members, those who are supporting them as well, really helps us to be able to kind of show the value of the program. And I think sometimes hits harder for some of the people who are looking maybe at the value and be like, okay, what has this program done? Some of those qualitative things sometimes hit harder than the numbers do anyways.
Yep, for sure. All right, so we're gonna have anybody that has any questions and conversations. So we're just gonna do these three conversations and questions. Anybody else want to speak up or ask other questions that you have? This is the opportunity. Thank you guys so much too. It's great that we have such a versatility of people that have spoke today too, on all the different things too, right? So I really appreciate that. I'm not sure if there's anybody that's said anything in the chat. Oh, hey, how about this one? Okay, I'm doing a bonus question if nobody's going to talk. How can we as individuals help promote the profession across Canada? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. But anybody that wants to come on and answer that right away?
I think social media is the pretty obvious answer. Anytime, like, I follow all these groups and little Facebook groups that I see people from, like what Mick said, BC or Ontario, Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia has so many amazing things for rec therapy. So I think that's a really easy way to promote as well.
Yeah, and what they post for their calendars and all their different
Yeah.
programs that they're doing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I was invited to some group that was from across the world that they all of a sudden added me to, and I was just like,
Cool.
okay, this is cool, right? I know. So
Yeah.
I mean, not just across Canada. So it's
Yeah.
really cool to see all
That's
the
cool.
different groups that there are. Anybody else want to answer that one?
It's Lynn, I can add. I
Sure.
think I remember we talked about this at a previous discussion group, but putting your name or just getting on some different committees that are not TR related, and having a voice in those, whether it's general recreation related things, maybe it's dementia specific committees, or working groups or anything like that. That's even from a national or provincial or even international level, where it's maybe not conventional like TR specific committee or group, but you can kind of have a voice for TR in those. I think that's really important.
Hi, Chantal. I would
Yeah.
just say some advice that I found that worked really well for me. And, it can spread Canada wide, I suppose, but just never assume that you don't have space in the room to contribute, right? So a lot of people think, recreation therapy isn't appreciated or recreation therapy isn't widely known. And although those things may be true, get it out of your head, right? Tell yourself, I should be in this space. I should be in this circle of care. I should be working with the OTs and the PTs, the exercise therapist, the music therapist. Just because I say I'm a recreation therapist and someone doesn't know what that means right away, it doesn't mean that it's not up to me to tell them as well, right? So don't always assume that you're the smallest profession in the room or the smallest person in the room. Make yourself known and stand up for what you're doing, and yeah, be proud of it.
I like that.
Awesome reply. Yes. All right. And then Jay did say in the comments, attend public engagement sessions put on by the federal government, for example, the new national caregiving strategy. So I guess there's other things out there that we could always become involved into, and just to be at the table with that too, right? So All right, well, I think we're going to be summing it up here. We got 3 minutes left. Thank you so much, ladies. That was so fantastic. And thank you, everybody that has joined in with us here. Jordan, did you want to come on and summarize anything?
Absolutely. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you to everybody for attending. This was a great session. Thank you, Chantel, for steering us through it. Very much appreciated, and just happy to be a part of it, and that we can put it on for everybody. Really quick housekeeping note: we will email a link out to the video when it's available to all the attendees. So please take a look for that, and feel free to share it with your peers and colleagues. And when you log out today, if you've got 2 minutes, there should be a Zoom survey that pops up. We'd love your feedback as well. So thank you again for attending today. Happy TR month, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.